Okay, look, listen, I'm just gonna jump the gun here already and say that Murder Drones is by far my favorite show of all time. If you've been watching my channel for a bit, you would already know how much I like the show, considering I made 3 YTPs about it, and ranked it first place on my glitch ranking video, which I recommend you go watch, by the way. Obviously, it's got problems, and it's not a perfect show by any means, but I have never watched a show in my life that I would consider rewatching over and over again until I got to this one. And you know, it's sad because I've heard about the show for years and didn't care about it until a friend showed the entire series to me. After having watched it though, I can confirm that it is indeed a masterpiece. So in this video, I'm going to be reviewing every single episode of Murder Drones, while also giving my opinions about why I like it so much. So without wasting any of your guys' time, let's start off with... So episode 1 starts off with some expedition said by an unknown narrator about how they are worker drones working for a company named JC Jensen, based on the real-life company SC Johnson. Their job to be helping humans mine exoplanets for their resources, I think. But the humans were unable to control the planet core, thus the planet exploded. But all the robots somehow survived, and they were able to build a future for themselves. But presumably the company brought in some new type of drones called the disassembly drones to kill off all the worker drones. After the title drop, we find out that this was actually a PowerPoint presentation made by our main character, Uzi Dorman. She's pretty much just the embodiment of an edgy teen, or, I'm sorry, angsty teen, who just wants to do a little bit of rule breaking because, you know, breaking the rules are pretty cool. Uzi is a really fun and great protagonist, so I like her a lot. She also has really good chemistry with another character I'll get into a bit later. Basically, she wants to go behind these 3 giant doors blocking everyone from the disassembly drones so she can go to the disassembly drones to kill them, doing so with a sick-as-hell railgun. Something I'm going to tell you guys right now is that one thing this show does a really good job at is comedy. And that goes for all types of comedy. I bring this up now because there's this cute little background joke about her not knowing how to get rid of the click to add title on one of her slides. Anyway, her railgun malfunctions and blows up the entire classroom. We then cut to Uzi with a band-aid and an ice pack on her eye, which is weird considering that she's a robot, meaning that none of the injuries she have will ever heal, but whatever. There's also these 2 characters that show up, just making fun of the fact that she didn't die, which is very rude. But right now they're not important, but I'll talk about them in the next episode, because one of them specifically is very important. We then get introduced to another character who I will go into depth on right now, which is Thad. Thad is pretty much a secondary character for the entire show, but he's still a great character, just being a guy who's nice to everyone who's around him. Speaking of secondary characters, we also get brief introduction to another character named Khan Dorman, aka Uzi's dad. The whole joke with Khan's character is that he's basically just a terrible father to Uzi, because he disregards her in pretty much every single way, and only really cares about doors. If you've watched my glitch ranking video, however, you'd know that I actually do quite like Khan, just because he's kind of funny. And stuff he does in the show, specifically in the first episode, is not very forgivable, but he's just funny to make up for it. When they're there, Uzi tells Thad about her plan to go kill the disassembly drones, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, she does so. However, as she goes to open door 3 with the doormaster's key, she gets confronted by Khan. I also find the scene really funny because when she sees Khan, she says Robo-Jesus, which is really funny to think about because that implies that robots have their own Christianity. After getting caught, Uzi then lies to her dad about she needs to get the measurements for door 1 so that way she can use it for a school project. She ends up tricking him, and he's really impressed because he thinks that his daughter is now into doors. She then goes to investigate the murder drone site. However, while she's there, she finds out that one of the disassembly drones is there, and there's a very high likelihood that she is going to be killed. After getting new ammo for her railgun and also having a hole stabbed into her hand, she ends up decapitating the disassembly drone with her railgun. She soon realizes, however, that the disassembly drone somehow regrew its head back. She then decides it's the best course of action to slap it with a hand that she found on the ground. This is when we get introduced to our second main character of the show, Serial Designation N. For being his disassembly drone, he's actually quite nice and respectful, and is probably one of the funniest characters in the entire show, which is saying a lot because this show is really funny. Because Uzi decapitated him, he doesn't recognize Uzi as a worker drone, and instead recognizes her as another one of the disassembly drones. After N introduces himself, Uzi's about to leave, but not before remembering the fact that she has a hole in her hand. But then N tells her that the saliva of the disassembly drones can actually heal that. However, because Uzi's not a disassembly drone, she kinda has to... I promise this show's good. Anyway, after that, N then introduces Uzi to the other two disassembly drones he works with, V and J. V is just a psychopath who loves killing for the thrill of it, and J just really likes working for JC Jensen. Both of them are great characters and act as the main antagonists for this episode, with J being great in this episode and V getting better later on. As for N's thoughts, he has a crush on V, and he thinks J's awesome, despite the fact that neither of them seem to like him very much. Uzi then asks N why they kill worker drones, and N says they need to drink their oil to prevent themselves from overheating and dying. Uzi also realized before this that the place that they're in is actually a spacecraft, and she brings up a plan to N that they might be able to go back to the humans by working with the worker drones. Just before Uzi can talk more to N about this, she realizes that the other two drones are coming, so she leaves. Something I forgot to mention earlier is that when N rebooted earlier, one of the things on his head, the yellow things, it became red, and that implicated that he lost a little bit of his memory of what just happened, which is also why he didn't recognize Uzi as a worker drone. It's relevant now because Jay punches him, and then he realizes that this whole time he's been talking to the same worker drone who just shot him in the face. After realizing this, he goes on his way to find and kill Uzi. When Uzi comes back, she attempts to close the door as fast as possible, but just before the door can fully close, N somehow manages to keep the door pried open. N then kills a bunch of people, and Uzi's about to kill N again before N almost kills her, and it causes Uzi to drop her railgun and go to Khan. However, Khan is not feeling the greatest and leaves her to die. Just more proof about Khan showing that he doesn't really care about his daughter. With N opening the doors, the three of them are now able to kill any worker drones in the facility, with the two of them actually respecting N for once. However, N thinks about the conversation him and Uzi were having earlier, and tells it to Jay, with him telling her that the company might not be all they say they are. Because of N questioning the company, however, this gives Jay the opportunity to infect him with a virus and possibly killing him. Uzi is somehow still alive, and manages to repair N by using a wrench that she got from Khan earlier in the episode. We then mostly end this episode off with Uzi fighting J and N fighting V. This action sequence is a bit bare bones compared to future episodes, but for this episode it's pretty good. Oh, so there was one specific moment during this fight scene that I don't think was supposed to be funny at all, but I'm sorry, just look at this. She just falls onto the ground like a Gmod ragdoll. It's hilarious. Both N and Uzi end up winning though and save all the other worker drones. Also, Uzi kills Jay specifically, I should probably mention that. While everyone's cheering and celebrating and talking about how cool N and Uzi are, Khan then shows up and Uzi rightfully tells him that he's a terrible father, with Uzi then deciding to banish herself. At the end of the episode, it becomes day and N says he can't go outside because for some reason the daylight will kill him, and Uzi tells him about how she is thinking about killing all humans and everything, you know, classic robot stuff. Also, this symbol shows up on Uzi's face for like a split second. It's probably not anything important though. And that was the pilot to Murder Drones. In my opinion, this is probably the weakest episode, but it was far from a bad one. In my opinion, the two best things about this show are its characters and its comedy. Every character, regardless of which role they serve in the plot, is either really funny or extremely likable. And it's not just the characters who are funny, simply things in the background are funny. Though, like I said, this is my least favorite episode of the show, and in my opinion, the biggest reason for that is its animation quality. Now, before Murder Drones, when Glitch made a show, the characters were usually rotoscoped in a sort of way. They had more human-like movements, and this applies to this first episode of Murder Drones. However, unlike those shows, I don't really feel like it fits the characters in this show. The way they move is just so weird and unnatural, and I don't really like it that much. Also, outside of animation, I feel like just like character models and designs in general just feel really off and weird. There's also some moments where it just looks like an animation mistake, like when the characters move their head a certain way, and you still see their eyes even though you probably shouldn't be able to. Another issue I have is that, you know how I said that disassembly drones feed off the oil of worker drones so they can stay alive? Well, it's important for the first half of the show, and then it completely gets abandoned by the 5th episode. It's just dumb, because why would you bring up this seemingly important plot point, but then not carry it out throughout the rest of the show? Other than that, though, this episode was still great. Great characters, great comedy, and a great experience. 7 out of 10. What was the name of the next episode again? Oh yeah, This episode starts off with a flashback sequence from when N apparently worked as a butler in this old-timey looking mansion. As he's leaving to go put dishes away, though, he bumps into what seems like an old version of V. An old version of V also shows up just to kick down N. There's also this human character named Tessa, according to Jay.
Move it, Mora. Hi, Tessa.
Along with Tessa is this new robot character who I'll talk about in a later episode, since her and Tessa are not really important right now. This flashback sequence, turns out, was also just a dream N was having. However, it was definitely something that happened in his past, for sure. You know how in the last episode, Uzi had that random symbol on her eye for some reason? Well, it's important now. She looks in a mirror, and that symbol pops up again, and breaks the mirror. Also, this isn't very important, but we found out that N was a pilot that crashed and ruined everything, so that's cool. Uzi's still on the whole wanting to kill all humans thing because of a few reasons, like mainly related to how they removed the memories of the disassembly drones and also stuff related to her mother. Also, humans weren't able to properly communicate with the disassembly drones, meaning that they weren't getting orders from the humans, but Jay had to be getting orders from somebody. Bee's also just here, chained up from last episode, and literally does nothing aside from telling Uzi that she wants to eat her organs. Cool. We then cut to these two guys, with one of them telling the other that they gotta go fix the hole in the roof because of what happened in episode 1. So the one guy puts the other guy, Frank, in charge of fixing the roof with a tiny ladder in complete darkness. Richard, for some reason, then decides to go over to Jay's dead body. As he finds it, though, he finds this little crab creature inside of her rib cage. Hey there, I am interrupting this part of the video to tell you how these crab things work. Basically, this is the core of any of the drones we see in the show. This applies to both the disassembly and worker drones. If something's wrong with their body, their consciousness is still inside of their core. But it works differently for both of them, because if a worker drone's body is gone, then only they'll live in their core. But if the body of a disassembly drone is dead, they can still regrow it back, which is, you know, how N grew back his head, because he still had his core and everything. That's about it. I just wanted to mention this quick little thing. Anyways, back to the video. As this is all unfolding in front of Frank, it seemingly turns into a more grotesque and monsterish form, all filling the room with this absolute solver symbol that we've seen on Uzi's eye earlier, ending with Frank most likely dying. My man did not get paid enough. After that very unfortunate tragedy, we see Khan go to a parent-teacher conference, with the teacher telling him that she's been acting a bit ruthless during class. You know, standing on her desk, not listening to the teacher when she should be, or stealing someone's sentience, you know, all the normal stuff. Doesn't matter that much, though, because right afterwards, we cut back to Uzi and N, finding out that robots can sweat, and also that Uzi is God. As they're doing that, though, Thad shows up so that way he can give Uzi back her railgun. When Thad is talking to Uzi about everything that happened, he tells her that he saw her gun crawl, which is, weird. Because of this, Uzi decides to go back and check things out with Thad and N. Before that, we see this guy who was working with Richard earlier in the episode, and he sees what he thinks is Richard. After a nice scream, Richard asks Tim, which is his name, if he wants to come and join him, standing eerily still and suspiciously low resolution. And this is when we get another murder. Yippee! After the pretty gruesome death happens, we then see that this monster's creature is mimicking Tim. After a pretty funny joke scene of N, Uzi, and Thad returning back to the door place, we then see a crime scene of the place where Tim died from earlier. We soon come to realize, though, that aside from this girl with the glasses, everyone, just like Tim and Richard, are holograms. Even the red lights, caution tape, the dead body, and even her own coffee mug were all fake. All just as a setup for another murder. We then cut back to the parent-teacher interviews, with Khan being upset at Uzi's teacher because earlier he said that Uzi's program might have been broken. And it's a really funny scene. Honestly, you should just watch it for yourself. We then get to know about these two characters a little bit more, who were in the first episode but weren't really that important to mention. These characters being Izzy and Doll. Lizzie is pretty much just a side character for the entire show, but when she has her moments, they're actually pretty funny. And it's weird because she feels like the character that I would hate, but I actually really don't. As for Doll, we'll get more about her later, but all you need to know right now is that she watched her parents die, and Anaduska. After that, though, Lizzie and Doll see a version of Lizzie at the other side of the door, while Lizzie kind of just shrugs it off as being a good-looking girl. We then cut back to the current trio, checking out the murder scene of, you know, what happened in episode 1, when we see that same absolute solver symbol, like the one on Uzi's eye, you know? And as Uzi looks at it more, she realizes that this might be the same reason as to why N grew back his head, with her proposing the theory that this is an auto-run program to collect matter. As she's saying this, though, N cuts her off as they literally see a human hand on the floor. As if that wasn't horrifying enough, it also grabs onto Thad's leg. Man, that's just beautiful. They also realize his hand is connected to something. So N fires a missile to see what it's connected to, where for a brief flash, we see this. Now that's horrifying. This hand then starts taking Thad away, and N briefly manages to cut it off with a ninja star, until him and Uzi get absolutely demolished by a giant other hand, which then grabs Thad and takes him away. They then go find Thad, where they find him as a hologram, using his scream to mimic his voice. However, he does a terrible job at it this time. After the pretty funny conversation with fake Thad, Uzi and N then throw a ninja star at him. However, it ends up going upward and saving the real Thad. Because of this, Thad invites N and Uzi to his shindig next weekend. I have no idea what a shindig is, but, you know, good for them. Anyways, the monster that's been killing people this whole time is this Absolute Solver program. The Solver also tells them that Jay can be revived, but they don't have enough resources to revive her. So they went out on a killing spree. She also makes a hologram of Uzi's mom, which is very creepy. Also, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, N is gone. We also see the Absolute Solver's head, which is just Jay's head, but distorted. And she kills Khan right in front of Uzi. I'll just tell you though, while she doesn't know it, that is just a fake version of Khan. Also, I only just found this mistake when I was making the video, but a weird animation mistake. The Absolute Solver throws Khan's body across, but when they cut back to Khan's body, he still has his full body, and not just his head. Not that big of a deal, I just wanted to point it out. Right as Uzi's about to meet the same fate, N comes in and saves her. After not very long, though, we actually find out that this N is not the real N, it's a hologram N. Uzi gets tossed around some bit, her railgun breaks. They thankfully survive the explosion from the railgun, and almost right after that, this next scene plays, which me and my friends have probably joked about the most out of anything that's happened in this entire show.
Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky away. Get snuck upon. Ow. Ow.
I'm dead serious. After everything that just happened, Uzi feels extremely traumatized by it and is scared to look at anything, even N, because she doesn't know what's real or what's fake anymore. When Khan shows up and Uzi sees him, she actually goes to give him a hug, which is surprising considering what he did in the first episode. Though, makes a lot of sense within the context of this episode. And I gotta say, despite what Khan did, this scene is actually really sweet. You guys soon see later, but as the series progresses, Khan actually tries more to be a father than what he was like before. Anyway, remember Doll and Lizzie? So basically what happened in that scene before is that Doll used this same Absolute Solver power to stop Lizzie from, potentially getting killed. It's interesting to see what she's like right now, but we'll talk about her a lot more when we get to episode 3. And the episode ends with N and Uzi contemplating their life choices. And that was Murder Drones episode 2. And I gotta say, it was a big improvement over episode 1. Improved animation, improved character models, and better horror and comedic moments. While my friends think this is the worst one, I do kind of disagree because I think this one still has a lot to like about it. Overall, I think as a whole, this is a pretty solid 8 out of 10 episode. Okay, so for this next title card, I'm not going to use the music from the episode because I thought there was a song that I really like that fits this part better. And if you somehow don't like that, then leave. Click off the video and leave. If you're somehow upset by that, then leave. But if you're not, well then... What you waiting for? I'm so impressed by you. In this episode, the prom for the year 3071 is about to happen. We also see in this part that a few people have gone missing, including this one girl who is just running in the hallway and gets her glasses broken. Who is doing this, you may ask? Well, I'm glad you did, because it's none other than Doll. I told you she'd be important. After killing this girl in the most badass way possible, we then go to the place that's essentially her home. She moves the books around with her Absolute Solver powers and grabs out a checklist of all the prom queen electives. And while it's pretty obvious to figure out, all the prom queen electives are also all the people who were on those missing posters earlier. And she then says hello to her dead parents. And then we cut to Uzi feeling extremely guilty as to what she did to N in the last episode. Aside from that, she also has no one to go to the prom with and gets made fun of for it. While this may suck, she found out all the stuff that Doll did without knowing that Doll did it. She takes the missing posters and hangs it up on the ceiling where she has a little conspiracy board, which she had at the end of episode 2 in the beginning of this episode. When she's about to hang it up, though, she realizes that all of her stuff is gone, because Khan took all of them and put them in a room of Nori's kooky insane stuff. Uzi goes into his room and once again tells him that he's an awful dad. Uzi finds out, though, that Khan actually signed her up for the prom and is not letting her see any disassembly drones, and also is making her go to the prom with Lizzie and Doll, which she does not like. We then see N and V discuss this prom, and while N doesn't want to go because he doesn't want to kill anyone, V does for the exact opposite reason. And when N tells her about the fact that they might not even know where they came from, V acts concerned about it. After hearing this, V tells N that if she's freed, she'll only kill anyone for survival. After that, we then see Uzi go to Doll's house to, change into her dress, and finds out that the place is absolutely infested with cockroaches. Or, robot cockroaches, I guess. Turns out real cockroaches never really survived. Uzi is also completely unable to leave. So that kinda sucks. Also, Doll can teleport, that's probably important. As for N and V, something I didn't mention is that at the end of episode 2, she broke free of this chain that was on her leg, preventing her from going anywhere. So when N is discussing with her that they can find out their true origins, she kills N so that way she can go to the prom and kill everyone. Also, as Uzi is changing into her dress, a lot of things happen. Like, she accidentally breaks the mirror, she overhears a conversation with Lizzie about how she's inviting V, and also she discovers something in the shower. Before that, though, we have to see N catch up with V, to stop her from killing everyone. And also brings his dapper suit. And also back to the bathroom earlier, it's filled with mirrors and robot corpses. Uzi also hears someone coming in, so she uses the mirrors as a staircase to a vent in order to escape. When she does leave, though, she finds N, and they both reunite together in a scene that you cannot convince me otherwise is not really cute. We then get to see what this prom is like, and, you see everyone having a good time, whatever. Except for Khan, who's most likely concerned about the fact that Uzi is not here. Anyways, Lizzie goes on stage and tells everyone that because all of the previous prom queens are gone, the prom queen by default is V for some reason. Lizzie tells everyone that her and V are friends and that she's not gonna murder anyone anymore. But then V's like, haha, I've bamboozled you, and is most likely about to kill everyone, before realizing that, yeah, she was elected as the prom queen. So instead of killing anyone, she kind of just embraces the fact that, people like her. However, this whole time, it was actually a setup by Doll so that way she could kill V. As Doll is about to carry out her scheme, though, Uzi and N just come in at the right time, while still thinking that V was the person behind this, even though she wasn't. It's revealed to us when Doll's killing everyone, though, that V was the one who killed her parents, so Doll wants revenge on her. V attempts to shoot down Doll, but Doll's powers made her bulletproof somehow. Before Doll can kill V, N and Uzi save her, and also everyone else. Doll questions to Uzi why she's working with the disassembly drones, even though they also killed her parents, supposedly. And Uzi tells her that she just wants to move on from everything that's happened with her, and drones like N are helping her do that. Man, that's sweet. Anyways, Doll attempts to finish off Uzi, but when she does, the knife that she threw just goes through Uzi's hand, almost completely unscathed. And no matter what she does with her powers, she can't do anything to combat Uzi. For once, she's kind of powerless. After probably the best action sequence in the whole show so far, which I don't want to comment on, you guys just gotta watch for yourself, because I don't really know how to comment on how good an action scene is. V just kinda shoots Doll in the back of the head without knowing that Uzi wanted some answers from her. Thankfully, though, Doll had the keys to her place, so they can go check that out. When they're there, they'll find the usual, dead body parts, dead parents, oil, all the stuff that a regular 18-year-old should own. Uzi does find out that the name of her mom was Eva, which, is kind of cool, I guess. Oh, hey, look, it's Doll. So basically, because of Doll's silver powers, she did survive, being shot in the back of the head, and uses the bullet that V shot her with to kill Uzi. But Uzi's solver powers themselves activate, stopping her from getting shot by the bullet. Doll feels sorry for Uzi because of this and tells her that if she finds something she's looking for, she'll help Uzi out with her powers. But just before they can say or do anything else, Doll completely dips on them. And finally, this episode ends off with this poor innocent worker drone getting stabbed with a sword by Tessa. I think I recognize that name. And is accompanied by Jay, who got back her physical form. And that was episode 3, The Promening. This has honestly got to be, like, my number 3, like, favorite episode of the show. And I gotta say, it's probably like a 9 out of 10. This episode is just really good. Best jokes so far, best animation quality so far, best fight scene so far. This episode's just got it all. I also really love Ed and Uzi's relationship in this episode. It's really cute and endearing. I love it. They both have what's practically like different personalities, but they just care about each other so much, and it's so wholesome. I love it so much. I've probably said the same thing already, but I don't care. I love this relationship. I could probably go on about this episode, but I don't want to get too carried away, so let's just move on to the next one. This episode begins off with Uzi's class going on a camping trip, and we get to see Khan tell Uzi about how him and his wife Nori, aka Uzi's mom, have actually been there before. And along with this, Khan also tells Uzi that Nori was very heavy on talking about the disassembly drones for whatever reason. With Khan then giving Nori's old necklace as a reminder and telling her to be safe, which is a really nice scene. This trip they're going on is basically Uzi's idea, and the teacher is essentially not going to do anything because it's Uzi's thing. Also, I don't know why, but everyone is just scared of Uzi in this episode. Like, what did she do to make them so afraid of her? And now, because the teacher's not helping any of them, instead, the disassembly drones N and V are going to. Also, V kills a guy for simply existing. That's just great. Reasonably, everyone is scared of, V and N, but Lizzie and Thad reassure them that they're fine and not going to hurt them, aside from the one guy that V just killed. So while everyone else goes ahead and does the camping stuff, V lets N know that she's going to go somewhere else, and that somewhere else being this abandoned cabin in the woods. So Uzi looks around the place with not really that many things of note worth. That is until she looks in this one spot where she sees what looks like a girl with a bow on her head. And then when she looks back, she sees what looks like a human arm. She also heard what she thought were screaming sounds, but turns out was just everyone else canoeing on ice. Also, Uzi gets a warning for high temperatures and sees a dead arm in her backpack that she presumably got from the 3rd episode in Doll's house. V also shows up for a bit just to tell Uzi that she's gonna kill her for some reason. After V leaves, Uzi discovers a dead body, a bunch of weird creepy papers, and a bug that she can communicate with. Only kinda though, because it works as a phone and how she has to text to communicate. As she's talking with it though, Doll appears right behind her and disappears, which is honestly really creepy. Uzi decides to meet up with everyone else, but when she does, she almost gets an arrow thrown at her, and while she does stop it, she turns it into a weird meat thing, and of course everyone is scared by this, and Uzi runs off again. She decides to leave to this other abandoned cabin where she closes all the doors, locks all the blinds, and just destroys a bunch of things to prevent anyone from showing up. When trying to destroy this one light, however, it turns into oil, like this oily monster, and it covers the entire screen. Meanwhile, with everyone else, B is like, I'm gonna kill Uzi, and then N is like, no, you're nuts. So N leaves and tells V to look after the other campers, which she decides not to. So these two characters, who I don't really feel like mentioning the names of, go to the same cabin that Uzi locked herself in, and when they show up there, they presumably get killed by Uzi. N goes looking for Uzi, and when he's there, stumbles upon this cabin place, a lot of cabins in this episode, wonder why. He ends up going there, and he finds these zombie drone tapes, and when he taps on them, what looks like parts of his past, flash before his eyes. Good thing he's not watching it, though, because the box says he wouldn't like it if he did. This seems like a weird time to mention now, but you know how earlier in this video I mentioned that disassembly drones need to eat the oil of a worker drone in order to prevent the temperatures inside of them from rising? Well, that is partially why Doll has been killing people, and most likely what is happening to Uzi in this episode. She is trying to feed off the oil of other worker drones in order to prevent higher temperatures, which is then what we see in this scene, which is honestly really gruesome, and is probably one of the most gruesome scenes in the whole show. if I'm being honest. The show's really good with horror, and I think this is probably the best horror episode so far. So everyone else who's still alive is just hanging out with each other, until one of them who was at the cabin that Uzi was at earlier shows up, somehow just barely alive, and attempts to tell them through descriptive clues that Uzi is about to kill all of them. Sure enough, Uzi does show up and kills them all one by one by one. And she's just about to kill Lizzie, but just before she can, V steps in and starts a fight with her. Once again, this is mostly an action scene, so I don't have much to say about it, but I did find this joke really, really funny. And Uzi is just about to finish off V, but not before N comes in and just throws her into the sky. After that, we get a nice little scene where N tells Uzi that they're gonna get through the whole thing of Uzi, killing people together. And also just about how N really enjoyed the company of Uzi. She just made things fun for him, and I honestly really liked it. It's really nice, and it's really cute. And that's pretty much the episode. There is a few things at the end, like how, just like the disassembly drones, the Uzi can't be in the sunlight. And N did bring the VHS tape for zombie drones for some reason. But there's not too much to it. I think one thing I really like about this episode is its theming. I know episode 3 had the theming of, the prom and whatever, but I think this episode just does the theming of the whole camp, a lot better. And like I said, I think this episode has the best theming of horror out of any episode in the show so far. So in my opinion, I think this episode deserves a 9 out of 10. Now, before we move on to the next episode, I just wanted to quickly mention a few things that I didn't get to mention yet that I still do like about this show. Because, it's the halfway point of the episode so far. So, I'm just going to share 2 other things that I really like about the show. First of those being the voice acting. I think every single voice actor absolutely delivers on what kind of role they're trying to do with each character they play. Think about V for a minute. She's mostly a sarcastic character, so she has a more monotone voice compared to everyone else, which makes her stand out more. And this goes for a lot of characters in the show, like Uzi and Jay, who all have a certain tone to their voice to make them fit the role they're playing. There's not one character in the show that I thought had a voice that didn't fit them at all. And the second thing I wanted to mention that I really liked about the show is the facial expressions, specifically on the eyes of the drones. The facial expressions for the drones is pretty simple. Filled eyes for when just casual, and unfilled eyes for, more exaggerated emotions. It may just be 2 expressions, but those 2 expressions are so simple to convey so much emotion. Especially for robots, you'd think that they wouldn't be able to convey this much emotion, but I think these facial expressions combined with the voice acting just makes for such personality-filled characters. So that's all I wanted to quickly mention. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to the next episode. This episode begins off with what seems to be the zombie drums tape that N found in episode 4. And while I may love the show and whatever, this part it was a bit hard to understand. But from what I can make out, they're telling the audience how to find out if a certain drone has the ability to revive themselves, which they call zombie drones. And as we called them, disassembly drones. When the tape ends, we see a pile of dead bodies with a crow, and when we zoom inside the dead pile corpse, there is one drone that is still alive, and it is this zombie drone that we have discussed. Now, remember at the beginning of episode 2 when it had a flashback sequence to when N was a butler? Well, that's where most of this episode takes place. Flashbacks of when N was, working in this fancy mansion and whatever. In this part, N is heading out in a restricted area, which is just a library with a bunch of other drones that are airing for some reason. And Anna's just sitting there reading a book about dogs, and also finds a note he's reading that was made by him, V, and Jay has some less than nice words to say. N throws the paper to what looks like the old version of V, and N proceeds to keep reading. As he is, though, he's hearing knocking sounds from the basement door, which is where V is standing. And then a book falls down, called Danger. And then 2 more books fall down practically right in front of him that say Enter and the Spooky Basement. However, N ain't a horror movie protagonist, so he just shrugs it off and dips. Now, let's quickly go back to episode 2 again, and you know how there was that robot that was with Testa that had no name before? Well, this is where we get to see her, and in the few frames we get of her before her proper design, she bears resemblance to the Absolute Solver from episode 2. This right here is Sin. Sin here asks N if he can attend the gala with her, but N tells her that they might not be able to because of the fact that most of the things there are people and not robots. After getting a bloody warning to go to the basement, and very obviously declining, Sin literally gives N puppy eyes, and then N tells her that they'll go to the gala. When they go there, they see some other robots being treated like garbage. And there's also the only human that actually respects the robots, that being Tessa Elliott. Tessa doesn't really get much screen time in the show, so I don't really have much to say about her, but what I do have to say about her, she's alright. So it kind of just begins as Jay and Tessa hanging out, and then when N shows up, Tessa immediately gets really excited to see him. When this is happening, N sees a message on the window by someone named Darkwolf X17, telling him that when he's about to die, he needs to speak out loud. After that, though, Tessa's mom comes over and tells Tessa that she doesn't want any of the drones here, and she specifically wants Sin away. I don't know why, but she just does. And to end off this pretty terrible news, she tells Tessa that she's gonna get rid of all of the drones in the library. Just as she's about to leave, however, Sin straight up says to her, well, how about no? Just as Sin's about to get in trouble for this, N steps in and is like, no, I was the one who told her to say that. N is punished by being attacked by crows while chained to a tree. Sounds awful, except N actually enjoys it a lot. When he tries to throw a stick for them, however, they quickly turn on him. They do end up clearing the way for one crow, though, who then proceeds to get possessed by Vecna from Stranger Things. After the crow dies, it then gets back up, revealing that it's actually this Darkwolf X17 character that we heard about, who is actually literally just Uzi. If you're confused on why Uzi's a crow in the past, then yeah, I get it. But basically, this is not really a flashback. It's actually just N's memories from when he used to be here, and Uzi is infiltrating them. After clearing up that confusion, we then see Tessa, Jay, and Sin, chained to one room of the house. It makes me feel really bad for Tessa, she should be put up for adoption. These parents are terrible. After clearing up that confusion, we then see Tessa, Jay, and Sin chained to one room of the house. It makes me feel really bad for Tessa, she should be put up for adoption. These parents are terrible. We also see that Sin has the same absolute solver power that Doll and Uzi have. And I guess she got the DLC pack because apparently she can also turn into a scorpion. In the scorpion form, by the way, she tells Tessa that as long as she doesn't go to the gala and obeys the orders, then she will be safe.
That's never gonna end up problematic.
Anyway, Uzi and N go to the library so that way they can go to the basement. But the only problem is that V is blocking the basement, so N has to move V very slightly. He does manage to move her and get access to the basement. However, as soon as he does so, he turns around to look at V and see that she's got a very menacing smile on and that her hand is looking very nasty. We then cut back to Jay and Tessa while Jay is trying to remove Tessa's chain to free her, since I guess she freed herself earlier. After freeing themselves, they go to collect any weapons they can get, which are a sword and a revolver. After they both switch out their weapons, N comes to warn them that there is a literal robot climbing on the ceiling. Once they discover this, Tessa and Jay fight off V, while N goes to the basement. On his way to the basement, though, all of the robot bodies that were there before are now all, dead and stuff. Quickly after that, though, N finally goes to unlock the basement, but as soon as he does, he gets jump scared by the Absolute Solver, and the Absolute Solver kills Uzi. The Absolute Solver then proceeds to forcibly bring N to the basement, but while it's doing that, Uzi then hijacks it. Remember, Uzi's not part of what's actually happening, so she can obviously do that. When they go to the basement, they see what's presumably the past lives of N and V. N quickly gets over it, and Uzi decides that both of them are gonna go leave. Things, though, quickly take a turn for the worst, as in the real world, Uzi gets interrupted by Doll showing up. And to make things worse, because Uzi no longer has control of the Absolute Solver, the Absolute Solver regains control of itself, giving it another opportunity to get rid of N's memories. We'll get back to that in a minute, however, because right after that scene, we cut to the gala, as I presume Tessa's dad is preparing a toast for everyone there, until Sin shows up to do her evil villain thing. But before anyone can do anything about anything, Tessa and Jay show up. When they show up, Sin moves everyone out of the way, and is about to start doing some sort of evil villain monologue. And then it just devolves into a really funny joke where Sin is trying to do her monologue, but Tessa keeps throwing stuff at her. That includes the actual gun itself and also all the stuff that's on the dish, including the dish itself. Obviously, it doesn't work on her though, since her solver powers basically just stop her from getting hit by anything. Sin then proceeds to take control of all the robots in the room, including Jay, and most likely kills all the humans in the room, possibly including Tessa. Meanwhile, the Absolute Solver is attempting to grab a tool that they can barely use. And Uzi is attempting to convince Doll why she should keep the bug, just so she can find out what's going on with her. The Uzi's trying to make sure N's safe, so she gives Doll the bug. Once again with the Absolute Solver, this time she grabbed in a version of V in order to try and grab up the item, but Even she can't do it. But that is until N gives her a little pair of glasses. Not all nice moments can last forever, though, as the Absolute Solver pins V to the wall and is about to erase N's memories. Just before it can, though, Uzi regains control of the Solver. Both V and N, though, end up recognizing Uzi as, Uzi, and not just Dark X Wolf 17. Both V and N, though, end up recognizing Uzi as, Uzi, and not just Dark X Wolf 17. With the whole thing complete, both of them get up completely fine, with V being rightfully pissed. In the very end sequence, we see Doll go visit Jay and Tessa. I know I said she might have died, but I wasn't saying it 100%. And gives her the cockroach that, she was trying to take from Uzi earlier. Along with probably the funniest joke of the episode. And that was episode 5, Home. There are some people who said that this is like one of the worst episodes of the show, and while I can kind of see why, I also don't think it's actually that bad. I really like the setting and aesthetic of this episode. It's very nice and clean. By far, the best aspect of this episode, though, is the new character, Sin. First of all, it's really funny how she kind of just self-narrates everything she says. And may I just say, Sin might have the best voice actor in the whole show. I know I just talked about how this show has really good voice actors, but Sin just takes the cake. It's just, she sounds so robot-like without actually having a robot voice. And sure, she has auto-tune on, but even if you listen to the voice lines without the auto-tune, it still sounds so much like a robot. Like, Bitsy, she did a great job as Sin. And some people say that this episode didn't need to have Uzi in it, and that it could have just been entirely a flashback episode. However, I'm fine with Uzi's inclusion. I like Uzi, so it doesn't really mind me that much. I give this episode an 8 out of 10. Also, I should probably mention this guy. He's, not important at all, but he says a funny line and has a funny voice, and the community gave him a name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. And I feel like people would have said something if I didn't mention him, so, you're welcome. The episode begins off with this girl with green hair attempting to save this other guy who's buffering and frozen. She then quickly meets the same fate as him, however, as she gets flashed in the face by this bright light. We'll come back to this new mysterious entity later. For now, we cut back to where we left off with episode 5 with N, Uzi, V, Tessa, Jay, and Doll. Jeez, that's a mouthful. And Tessa tells them that basically Sin ran away over to Copper 9, which is the name of the planet the emergence takes place on. I don't know why I didn't mention this earlier. So they're trying to figure out why she went here. When this is happening, though, Doll takes the cockroach key and runs away with it. They end up following her and try and gun her down, but she ends up falling down the hole. However, this ain't any normal hole, okay? This hole leads to the Cabine Fever labs. So I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but you know that cockroach from episode 4 that also reappears in episode 5 that is used as some sort of key? Well, in episode 4, that bug told Uzi to meet them in Cabine Fever labs at an elevator. So that's exactly what they're all going to do. They're going to go down to Cabine Fever labs to the elevator to see where it takes them. And of course, they need to catch up with Doll because if they don't have the cockroach, then they can't get to the elevator. Very unfortunately, Jay stays behind to take care of the ship, which, like I said, is really sad because Jay's a pretty cool character and really deserved a lot more screen time throughout the series. So they go down the hole, and when they're there, they find an absurd amount of dead corpses of what seem to be past disassembly drones, with a message saying to not look into the light. After moving past security, they find out where the secret elevator is, which is funny because N asked earlier if the secret elevator was labeled, and then after a little bit, they find out that it was actually labeled, which is really funny. Also, it's pretty important to mention that they're doing this to foil Sin's plan, whatever she's trying to do for world domination, and also figure out more stuff related to Uzi's mom, Nori. Oh, and also, Tessa gets dragged away by a rope. That's, probably not good. As they're trying to find her, they end up going down this hallway where, at the end of the hallway, find a baby making baby noises. Insert possibly the funniest joke of the show here.
Shoot the baby immediately.
Now, a lot of stuff happens in this scene, so bear with me. The baby grows spider legs and then climbs up on a ceiling. And then this other character comes in that I'll talk about later, shows up, places his arm in front of them, that then acts as like some sort of flashbang grenade. After the three of them get Think Fast Chuckle Nutted, we see Uzi waking up, tied up on a hospital bed. And this is where we get introduced to our new character, Alice. Alice is a more of a forgettable character because she only appears in this one episode, but her backstory is basically that Uzi's mom Nori had left her one day, and she was experimented on in the Cabine Fever labs, so she has a grudge against Nori, and nowadays just takes all the parts from other worker drones who get killed by the Sentinels, and just kind of turns them into her own. I'm not really sure why she put magnets on their heads, but I know for Uzi, it's stopping her from using her solver powers. Now, while Uzi and V were put into one room, N and Tessa were put into a different room, and there we have a new character called Bo, who was the baby from earlier. While there wasn't really that much to say about Alice, there's even less to say about Bo, as they really just serve an assistant for Alice. Yeah, once again, I don't really have that much to say about them, because they're only in this episode and don't serve that big of a purpose to the plot. So, yeah, they're alright, and I think are good for this episode. Bo is about to do some more dissectory on N before Alice calls them over to bring more magnets to Uzi. So with Bo leaving, it gives Tessa and N a way of leaving. Back with Uzi and Alice attempts to cut off Uzi's finger that she uses for her solver stuff. And the scene looks honestly probably as painful as it feels for Uzi. Back with what's going on with N and Tessa, Tessa's kind of just doing some hacking on the computer, I guess. With Tessa showing N some images that may or may not be important going on forward. However, Alice now knows about the fact that both N and Tessa are escaping. So she sends in these creatures called the Sentinels, which were the monsters at the beginning of the episode, which are pretty much like disassembly drones if they were reptiles. One of those Sentinels finds N and ends up giving him the buffering treatment. Tessa tries to go and tame the Sentinel, especially because the Sentinel can't really eat her since she's made of blood and not oil. However, it doesn't really work out for her. However, when this happens, the Sentinel completely shuts down because they're not eating oil and instead eating blood. When Uzi was seeing N, almost dying, she partially turned yellow and destroyed part of the wall, so that's kind of interesting. She also messes with some other stuff, causing one of the doors to open. And when Alice tries to shut one of the doors, she ends up getting killed by one of the Velociraptors. When the Velociraptor gets inside, Bo has the opportunity to stop the Velociraptor, but instead uses it to save V, sacrificing himself, which is probably why he's become popular in the community. V uses this opportunity to escape and try and save Uzi. And while attempts to kill the Velociraptors, she ends up realizing that the wall that Uzi made earlier is now a black hole, and presumably off-screen sucking up the Velociraptors. After that event, all four of them end up reuniting with each other. And V is extremely mad at Tessa because Tessa lied and said that she could control the Sentinels, which I didn't mention earlier because I forgot. There's also this really cute scene where Uzi wakes up, sees N, and gives him a hug. It's really nice and sweet. Anyways, remember how there was that Sentinel that practically died because they bit Tessa? Well, guess what? It's alive and can now literally kill anything. They start scanning and following footprints until they see a sign that says, "Hold still," which was actually just a trap set up by V to kill him. Then Uzi and N have a conversation while having to use text on their faces because, they can't actually talk. Once again, another pretty cute scene. In the middle of their conversation, though, the Blood Sentinel gets distracted by one of the other Sentinels and leaves. Now that they no longer have to deal with the Sentinel, they can finally go to the elevator, but before they can, they have to go through a hallway with Doll at the other end. However, it cannot be a threat because she got flashed by one of the Sentinels. Because of this, they kind of believe that it's a trap. There's also this kind of weird scene where Uzi attempts to use her solver powers to just go through the whole thing, but N stops her, and V finds this to be really weird. I don't know why. After that, though, they kind of realize that it's not a trap since Tessa got over there really quickly, with no issues at all. And I know I just said so far that there are two scenes in this episode that were cute. This one tops them all, with N and Uzi going down the hallway while sweating and blushing and holding hands, which is both really funny and, like I said, really cute. When they get to the end of the hallway, they find out that it turns out Doll wasn't actually flashed by the Sentinels and was just using a buffering GIF, which is genius. So Doll takes the key, calls down the elevator, alerts the Sentinels, and with that, goes down. And so now while the elevator has been called down, the Sentinels know where they are. With this new knowledge, Tessa alerts specifically the Blood Sentinel, and Uzi tries to open up the elevator. With this new knowledge, Tessa alerts specifically the Blood Sentinel, and Uzi tries to open up the elevator. However, while Uzi's trying to open up the back of the elevator, her hand ends up doing that whole summoning the black hole thing again. And to prevent things from getting wild with her hand, N chops it off. Meanwhile, Tessa is still trying to guide the Blood Sentinel, and ends up almost getting shot until V saves her and literally catches the bullet. Also, with the back of the elevator door opened, Tessa, N, and Uzi end up going down the elevator, while V stays behind to fight the Sentinels, and also saves the other three from almost getting killed by a Sentinel on the other side, thus sacrificing herself. And that was episode 6 of Murder Drone's Dead End. And I'm gotta be honest, it's probably my favorite episode of the entire show. There's one that I'd rank above it just because I think it has overall better stuff in it than this episode, but I think in terms of what I like, it probably has the best to offer of that stuff. More great animation and graphics, some of the best jokes the show has, and probably some of the best moments the show has. For me, this is probably a 10 out of 10 episode. Also, there's just something I wanted to quickly say related to this episode. One big complaint people have with Murder Drones is that some of the comedy interrupts more the serious or horrific moments. And while I do kind of agree with that, it didn't really bother me that much. However, also there's just something I wanted to quickly say related to this episode. One big complaint people have with Murder Drones is that some of the comedy interrupts more the serious or horrific moments. And while I do kind of agree with that, it didn't really bother me that much. However, in this episode specifically, there's not really any of those moments. In fact, when there is any bit of comedy in a horror moment, it really doesn't interrupt the scene at all. And it continues to do this for the next 2 episodes, which I'll talk about now. So, as of recording this part of the video, Murder Drones just got added to Amazon Prime, and there was one thing I wanted to mention about it that I actually found really funny. So, as you can see, these are the descriptions for each episode, and while most of them just kind of sum up what the episode's going to be about, plus a few comedic jokes spread in there for good measure, episode 7 literally just says, "A lot of things happen in this episode, so don't read this, just go watch it." Liam, you're the best. Anyways, this episode begins off with a flashback sequence from when the humans were still alive testing stuff on Copper 9. Oh, and hey look, they're experimenting on Nori. How cool and probably important for the plot. The main human character of these flashback sequence is the intern Mitchell, who accidentally stole the suit of Dr. Chambers when he was supposed to take his intern uniform, making him unintentionally important to the plot. As for Nori, she starts to become really unstable, growing these tentacle arms similar to the ones the Absolute Solver has, because right now she seems to be infected with the Absolute Solver virus, and they use this light-up demon summoning circle looking thingy in order to briefly stop her. After that happens, the priest character orders Mitchell to go and find Eva, who is actually Doll's mom. So he finds her, brings her to Cabine Fever Labs. However, when he gets back, he notices that everything seems to be normal and in order. As Mitchell starts to walk further, though, you start noticing these little glitch effects around everything. And we soon find out, as the music cuts, that nothing was fine, and that everyone here is dead, including the priest, who then proceeds to get dragged into the hole. We then see Nori as she walks out of that same hole, takes the USB cross from Mitchell, and presumably kills him. We'll get back to this scene a little bit later. After this scene, however, is when we finally and properly get introduced to Nori. Her existence has been teased for so long now, including this intro where the Absolute Solver was using her as a host. But now she's finally here. The people who haven't watched this show are probably wondering why she's just her core and not her entire body. I'll explain that in a little bit. All we get to see her do right now is use her solver powers to map a specific area and then go mining, I guess. After that, we see En, Uzi, and Tessa, who fell down the elevator from the last episode. And I'm assuming they're on the side that they're not supposed to be, because En then proceeds to start getting rid of the rocks. However, just as he's doing this, he almost hurts Uzi in the process. Tessa and En also let Uzi know that she might want to sit this one out because there's things here that she might not want to see. En also tells Uzi that they're not going to hurt her, but then Uzi takes this as, "You are going to hurt me." Why? Where did you draw that conclusion from? Uzi then proceeds to summon a black hole from her hands, and ends up collapsing the cave that they're in and separating the 3 of them. Also, I'm going to mention this now because after this scene cuts to one of 3 scenes where we see Thad, Lizzie, Khan, and Jay just kind of doing things. It's not really that important. I just thought I'd mention it because, it's here. And hey, it's fun to see these guys again after being absent last episode. Back to stuff mostly important to the plot. We see En's perspective of where he ended up after the cave crash, with one of his arms being stuck in between some of the rocks. So he attempts to saw his arm off in order to free it. Just as he's about to chop off his arm, however, he then sees what looks like V from the past. And while this episode probably has some of the least amount of comedic moments of any episode, it probably has also one of the funniest. It's not just the perfectly cut off scream that's funny, it's just the fact that afterwards it cuts to this meme emoji, which is so funny because it feels so out of place to the rest of the show. Speaking of this next scene, we see Uzi having to deal with the disease of yellow, and she also sees a picture of Nori and the church that they were doing experiments on her for. She moves along a little bit more and discovers a flesh tunnel with a skeleton and a lantern, which she then takes with her tail. We then practically immediately come back to En's perspective, where he's still trying to chop off his arm while the Absolute Solver is controlling an old version of V and probably trying to kill him. When the Solver gets close to him, it grabs him with this tentacle and then takes the form of Sin while also showing him some weird flashback sequence. This flashback sequence being when N and all the other disassembly drones killed all the humans on Earth. And right after experiencing that, then proceeds to get dragged away by the Solver. We once again then get to see Uzi's perspective as she takes a look around the church. She then proceeds to stumble upon the exact same office area that Nori was at the beginning of the episode. When Uzi goes there, she sees this pause video, which was the same video that we were watching at the beginning of the episode, and she decides to rewind it to see what it was like, and by the looks of it, is not handling it very well. Maybe if she listened to N, this would have ever happened. Speaking of N, we get to see his perspective again as he's being dragged into the meat cave. Why the hell did I call it the meat cave? Nori thankfully saves him from almost certain doom, and for some reason decides to ask him a lot of questions while they're running away from the Solver. They do thankfully get away, however, right as they do get away, N says something about Uzi to Nori, and Nori is pretty shocked by this. We'll save that for later though, as right afterwards we see the perspective of Tessa. After entering in a human vacation, because she is indeed human, she then proceeds to blow up a computer that had a lot of documents relating to the test subjects at Cabine Fever Labs. As she's staring at the mess she created, Doll shows up to ask her where the patch is, aka the crucifix-looking thingy that we saw at the beginning of the episode. Again, she needs to know where it is because this is the cure to the absolute Solver virus. Tessa does get the upper hand over her though, and while doesn't seem to kill Doll herself, she does leave Doll alone to die by a figure that we can't really see. After that, in the very next scene, we get to see the aftermath of what happened at the beginning of the episode. For any of you guys who are fans of Mitchell, thankfully they don't die. Instead, Eva took the USB crucifix and threw it back at Nori. And that crucifix falls down that giant hole from earlier. And while Nori's practically cured of the virus, her hand starts doing that thing that Uzi's hand was doing earlier and summoning a black hole. And while Eva does cut it off and send it into the hole, there's another problem. It explodes. Now, after this happened, I have to mention something very important. You know how at the beginning of the show, Uzi said that the core malfunction was the reason why Copper 9 killed all humans? Well, that was actually false. It was actually what we saw in this episode. And while I think it was said in this episode as well, I'm not really entirely sure. The disassembly drones were not sent by the J.C. Jensen Company, but rather Sin. After Nori tells N what I just told you guys, we then get 2 scenes of them just talking about stuff, and to summarize it really quickly, Nori just says how she wasn't really the best mother to Uzi, and tells N to not tell Uzi that she is her mom. Cutting back to Uzi once again, after watching the video, nothing except for the absolute Solver symbol is on her face. She turns into a more normal state though when that absolute Solver symbol on her eye breaks the screen, similar to how it would break mirrors in past episodes. She then also proceeds to take off the keychain that her mom used to own, presumably of what she saw. Doll also shows up right in front of her and just dies. However, just before Doll died, she put a message on her face telling Uzi to fight back. Just as Uzi sees this, none other than Tessa goes through the door. Tessa here is actually here to kill Uzi because of her infection with the Solver virus. And no matter how much begging Uzi does to not, Tessa still attempts to go along with it. Just before Tessa's about to finish her off though, N comes in, here to ask Tessa about the patch. And then Tessa then starts to try and go on a whole monologue about how she still keeps N before N decides to just kill her. Now that Uzi's safe, N tries to help her up, before finding out that Uzi has now been fully corrupted by the Solver, and also destroys the patch. This then leads to an action sequence between N and Nori fighting Uzi corrupted by the Solver. Can't say too much about it other than multiple times during the sequence, N gets too scared to kill Uzi in any sort of way. So to sum up this N part, Nori almost gets consumed by the Solver before N writes with his hands the fact that they're all just hanging out, with this giving Nori the opportunity to absolutely slap the ever-living hell out of Uzi. And while Uzi is back to her normal state, she does get really mad at Nori and proceeds to throw her down the hole, like with everything else in this episode apparently, and also accidentally lets slip to Uzi that was her mom that she just killed, probably. Obviously from this news, neither of them are in the best state right now, so they hug it out. Doesn't last that long though, as Tessa somehow puts her head back despite it being decapitated earlier. Because the thing is, this whole time, they were never actually following Tessa. We then also see this mysterious creature eat Doll's core whole, and this mysterious creature is Sin. Plus, she's wearing Tessa's human skin, which is like metal as hell. She also then proceeds to beat up both N and Uzi, but doesn't actually kill them and instead just leaves. And that leaving is to go blow up the world for a second time. And she also attempts to bring N and Uzi along with her. As they're being brought down though, Uzi notices the keys that Jay dropped earlier. And she uses this to free N but sacrifice herself, with her last message being to him to die mad. And while it looks like she's probably about to die, she doesn't. She just drifts off into space. Literally. And that there, my friends, was episode 7 of Murder Drone's Mass Destruction. And people are going to get mad at me for this, but I thought this was probably one of my least favorite episodes of the show. I still think the pilot was worse than this, which is also probably a controversial take because people thought that the pilot was actually pretty good, And I think maybe for this one, it's mostly just because I feel like it has less character in it. Future me here, I just realized that I didn't really go into detail as to why I think it has less character, so that's exactly what I'm here to do. Basically, I think this episode was very plot focused, and while that's not really a bad thing, I feel like that plot focus gave the characters a lot less time to shine. So that's just why I feel like this episode has less character overall. But with that out of the way, continue watching the video. Nori was alright, I guess, but I feel like in this episode specifically, she was kind of not great to watch, because she was annoying to En and everyone else around her practically. But also I think a contributing factor as to why I like this episode less is that, I don't know why, but before I became a fan of murder drones, I was more so interested in the Amazing Digital Circus. And because this episode came out after the Amazing Digital Circus, I kind of just decided to watch it because I was getting bored and wanted to wait for some more Digital Circus content to come out. And thinking about that more, it kind of felt wrong watching this before any other episode of the show. And I feel like maybe because I did that, this episode just left more of a bad taste in my mouth. It's still a really good episode, don't get me wrong. I just like it less compared to the other episodes. Here, I'll put the score here. I don't feel like saying it this time. And now, after talking about 7 episodes of the show, we can finally move on to the last episode. And that episode is... Instead of beginning where we left off, this episode tells us without actually saying anything about it that the gravity on Earth has become very not good. And also the teacher who just doesn't care at all. Okay, now where did episode 7 leave off again? Oh yeah, Uzi in space, I completely forgot. When Uzi's there, she has a conversation with Nori, but they can't, talk normally, because in space you can't talk for some reason. To summarize their conversation, Uzi is worried about getting controlled by the Solver again, but Nori reassures her and tells her that in order to stop the Solver, she needs to get rid of the core from Sin, because that's currently the Solver's host. This moment is interrupted, however, as En comes in on the spaceship, and proceeds to bring Uzi along inside the ship. Skipping ahead a few seconds, Sin comes in and tells them to stop and proceeds to blow up the ship. En and Uzi then proceed to fall down the space as they burst into flames, even though it doesn't seem to affect them whatsoever, and have a little heart-to-heart about how they're officially dating, which, again, is another pretty sweet scene. From one piece of great news to another, Jay actually serves a purpose in the plot! That purpose being to kill Lizzie, Thad, and Khan, despite the fact that they would have died anyways because of how gravity works. Now, this is gonna seem pointless at first, but remember when V sacrificed herself at the end of episode 6? Do you think she survived or not? Well, you're wrong, because she did. And she proceeds to instigate a fight with Jay, which is just a scene of them fighting and arguing about which side is better to be on. Uzi then proceeds to destroy the entirety of Copper 9, which, leave it alone, it's been destroyed 3 times already. Now, doing this did stop the Solver for a bit, but keyword is only for a bit, as Sin comes back right away and reverts everything back to normal. Speaking of Sin, she is easily the best part of the episode. Threatening, scary, and also really funny. Just to show how scary and threatening she is, here's a good list of what Sin does in the next few minutes. She attempts to take control of Uzi again, rips out Uzi's core, attempts to get rid of En's core, and that's just what she does on the outside. Wait till you see what she does in the dark hallway. She sends out a bunch of arms to go find Uzi and En, almost rips out Uzi's core again, tricks V into thinking that she's talking to En when she shows up there, rips out En's core when he's alerting V, and finally makes V watch as she's about to eat En's core. Has my point been made clear enough? Also, about the hallway scene, I didn't really talk about it much at all, but it was actually really scary, and it was really good at being scary, so I like it. About Sin almost killing En, the door behind her closes, and she drops En's core, allowing En to go back to his normal body. Uzi also saves V from getting killed by Sin, which is good. And now Uzi seems to have more power over Sin than Sin does over her, with this whole thing ending in one final battle. Again, can't really comment too much on it because it's amazing, and you should probably just go watch the scene for yourself. Though there are a few things I'd like to point out. First of all being that Sin at one point turns herself into En, so that way she can make Uzi think that she just hurt En. Jay also gets demolished in the fight really quickly, and it kind of makes me sad, because not only did she barely do anything in the fight, but now she's just absent for the rest of the episode. She's not dead, just doesn't show up anymore. En and Uzi also make a secret handshake during this fight, and it's kind of funny. To end this fight though, Sin loses because she teleported right in front of Uzi's hand, and that area just so happens to be where her core was, which then Uzi proceeds to get rid of. When she does though, it kind of just ends up summoning this really big black hole that, while it doesn't suck up any matter in front of it, makes everything go black and white. Uzi also now has a smaller black hole, which is what's left of Sin's life. This scene's also really good because it makes Sin look more horrifying than she did in any other part of this episode. And while Sin's about to take back her life, Uzi just decides to eat it. I mean, not very conventional, but it's one way, I suppose. Now that Uzi basically killed Sin, Sin's body proceeds to melt. And while that's probably good, Uzi then proceeds to go unconscious, which is a lot less good. She does thankfully wake up and meet back with N and V. And while she is okay now, V notices that part of her eye is yellow, though Uzi just passes it off as her being a damaged OC, and we all move on. And this episode ends like how episode 1 started, with Uzi giving a PowerPoint presentation to the entire class. As a bonus, N also now knows that he can draw manga, apparently. And there's one more thing we can end this episode off with knowing that the solver is still alive, but stuck in Uzi's tail. And thankfully, because of that, they can't really do much outside of be a nuisance to Uzi. And that was episode 8 of Murder Drones, an absolute end. Sorry I kind of made this part a little shorter, so I'll extend it a little bit by giving my extended thoughts on this episode. I think this episode was amazing, and I think it wrapped up the series really well. There are some problems I have with it, but most of them are really minor problems, and I can get past them for the most part. Everything from the animation to the horror elements to the action elements, it's all just so well done. And I'd say better than any other episode of this entire show. This episode I also think fixed my problem I had with episode 7, in which it had a lot more character-related stuff, which is great for me. There was definitely a lot less comedy in this episode, which does make me a little sad because that's one of my favorite aspects of the show. But it's okay because the comedy in this episode is still really good for what it is. Also, I didn't really talk about the side characters in this episode because they're not very important to the plot, but hey, you know, they're great. I think the Velociraptor going to town on Lizzie was pretty funny. And I may have already talked about the animation looking good, but the visuals, they're on a whole new level, man. Don't get me wrong, there's still some aspects of this episode I don't like the way they handled Jay partially, not entirely, but a little bit. And also, the scene where Uzi locks the door on Khan makes me a little bit mad because she still hasn't accepted him for who he is yet, but I'm not extremely upset about it. When people criticize this episode, they particularly look at the writing, though I'm not really the one to judge on that kind of stuff because I don't really know entirely what constitutes as good writing or what constitutes as bad writing. I know I said some things had good writing before, but that's just kind of me describing that I like the thing because I wanted to sound fancy, when in reality I kind of just meant thing is good. But again, this episode is really good and an easy for me 10 out of 10. Man, was that a lot. This video has been going on for like almost an hour at this point, so I'll just try and wrap things up the best I can. Like I said in the intro of this video, Murder Drones is probably my favorite show as of right now. Not just like in terms of indie animation, just in general. I honestly really regret not watching the show when it was gaining attraction on YouTube, because I've never watched a show that just felt like if you combined an actual series with modern internet humor and somehow pull it off so well. And yes, the show may be over now, but it's still staying alive in many other ways, I'm sure of it. From more merch drops, despite the fact that the show has been over for 8 months, to multiple fan projects coming out, this show will stay alive one way or another, and I genuinely couldn't be more happy about that. Now, I've talked about this for like over an hour at this point, so to end things off, I'll just say, if you're still watching this and haven't skipped all the way to the end, then thank you for watching this really long video. I worked really hard on it, and I'm so glad that you guys got to see my progress on it. This took me a really long time to make, and if you are one of those viewers who stayed till the end, I'm really thankful about that. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.